All right, you ready for this? We're going to dive deep into the travels of Guru Nanak.
Journeys that shaped ideas.
And left ripples across multiple faiths.
Even today?
We talking some serious aha moments here.
You know what makes this deep dive so unique?
What's that?
We're not just going to hit the highlights.
It's like dates and places.
Yeah, dates, places, done.
Right.
We're going deeper.
Okay.
We're weaving in his philosophy using this amazing blend of YouTube videos.
Ooh, videos.
Historical stuff mixed with modern-day pilgrimage footage.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
so picture this. 1469, the Indus region.
Not exactly a peaceful time.
Right, invasion.
Invasions galore, freedom of thought. Not so much.
And right in the middle of all of this.
Smack dab in the middle of this, in Nankana Sahib.
Modern-day Pakistan.
Yep, modern-day Pakistan. Guru Nanak is born.
Wow.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Nowadays, Nankana Sahib is home to Pashtun Sikhs.
Okay.
You've got this group known for their warrior traditions.
Right.
Deeply connected to Sikhism.
That's fascinating. Talk about cultures blending over time.
Yeah.
But back then, Guru Nanak was already rocking the boat.
Oh, yeah. What about that story with him as a kid?
Oh, you mean about the Janu ceremony?
Yes. Where upper caste Hindu boys get this sacred thread.
Right. And Guru Nanak was like, nope, not for me.
He was like, I want the everlasting thread.
Woven from compassion.
He was calling out the whole caste system.
Even as a child.
As a child.
It's not just that he dissented, it's what he proposed.
Yeah.
Instead,
Yeah.
compassion as this core value, this thread that connects us all.
I love that.
That's something we can all learn from.
Centuries later.
Even centuries later.
Speaking of challenging norms,
Oh, yeah.
his dad gives him money to start a business.
What does he do?
Goes and feeds a bunch of hungry ascetics.
The Satya Sauda?
The true business.
Hold on, there's a lot to unpack there.
Okay.
See, most folks would see this as a failure, right?
Yeah, probably.
But this true business was about something bigger. It was about serving others, putting compassion into action.
Right.
It's like a seed that blossoms into the Langar tradition, free food for everyone, regardless of who they are.
Which is still going strong today.
It is.
The source material shows this incredible scene at the Nanak Shahi Gurdwara in Dhaka, Bangladesh.
Oh, wow.
Muslim students, Sikh volunteers, all working together in the Langar.
That's amazing.
That's Guru Nanak's impact.
Transcending time and religion.
And that's what makes his travels so much more than just sightseeing.
Yeah, he set off with Bhai Mardana,
A musician.
a musician from a totally different background.
So this was about shattering barriers from the get-go.
From the start.
So these journeys were like tapestries, right?
Yeah.
Woven together from all these encounters with different faiths, communities.
Exactly.
It wasn't about ticking off destinations.
What about the connections he forged along the way?
I like that.
Exactly. And the stories themselves are so vivid.
Give me an example.
Okay. At the Jagannath Temple in Puri,
Okay.
there were these elaborate rituals going on.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just observing, Guru Nanak composed a hymn right there,
Really?
highlighting the importance of respecting nature over empty practices.
Wow.
It wasn't about the spectacle. It was about connecting with the divine through creation itself.
He wasn't afraid to call out hypocrisy, even in holy places.
It's true.
And this theme pops up again at the Jawalamukhi temple.
Where they worship fire.
Yes.
Hmm.
But Guru Nanak's focus, the flame of wisdom burning within each of us.
He was all about internal transformation, not just external displays.
I love that.
What's fascinating is how he used metaphors to get these points across.
Oh, yeah.
Like in Kantanagar,
Okay.
he observed women multitasking.
Children, work, everything.
Everything. And he used that to slam gender discrimination, saying women are essential to society.
Wow.
It wasn't just a theoretical argument. It was rooted in his observations of everyday life,
He really elevated women's status.
which was unheard of back then.
There's this other story, though, where some women try to tempt him. Instead of judging, he encourages them to redirect their thoughts,
He saw the potential for good in everyone,
even when they were making mistakes.
even when they were making mistakes,
It speaks to his compassion.
and his understanding of human nature,
Transformation doesn't come from condemnation.
but from guidance and seeing the spark of divinity in everyone.
So picture this. Guru Nanak's at the Dakashwari temple in Dhaka,
Okay.
and this pilgrim's asking about visiting Sonargaon.
This super rich city.
Irwinot uses this metaphor of a deer.
Great vision, but easily distracted.
Don't chase fleeting things.
Focus on what matters.
Yeah.
Meaningful connections, spiritual growth,
It's a message we need now more than ever.
With all the distractions swirling around us.
Then in Mashhad, Iran, someone asks him which sect of Islam is superior.
And what did he say?
Guru Nanak, quoting Islamic teachings themselves, says, "Nope, the divine light resides in everyone equally."
He's not picking sides. He's highlighting the common ground.
It's like he's saying, drop the labels, drop the divisions.
Look deep.
It's a powerful message.
Especially in a world that often feels so polarized.
Okay, so these Niyat yogis, ascetics, known for their spiritual knowledge.
But at Ritha Sahib, they're totally hostile towards Guru Nanak.
Even though he's basically a rock star of spirituality himself.
And then again at Gadwar,
what happens?
He calls them out for focusing on outward appearances instead of inner transformation.
It's like you can have all the knowledge and rituals in the world.
But if your heart's not in the right place...
what's the point?
What's the point?
So it's not enough to just talk the talk.
Right.
You've got to walk the walk.
And speaking of walking...
Guru Nanak's travels took him to so many incredible places.
And each stop had these unforgettable metaphors.
Oh, I love the metaphor.
Oh, yeah. The simul tree in Ceylon.
Sri Lanka.
Tall, imposing, but no fruit.
Like a life filled with ego, all show, no substance.
Then there's the earth as father, water as mother, highlighting our connection to nature.
And who could forget the sinking and floating food at Manikaran?
Drowning in sorrow versus surrendering to natural law.
I love that.
That's powerful imagery.
These stories are so vivid, they stick with you long after you've heard them.
They do.
And the source material weaves in voices from modern-day pilgrims, too.
It's like layers upon layers of experience.
Like Mr. Sanjeev Chandra Hota in Cuttack.
Incorporating Guru Nanak's verses into his prayers.
Even though he's not Sikh.
Then the Sindhi community in Colombo.
Preserving the Guru Granth Sahib.
The Sikh scripture.
And get this, in Afghanistan, there's Khalida Begum,
a Muslim woman,
who's the caretaker of a Gurdwara.
Talk about breaking down stereotypes.
Wow.
It's these unexpected stories that show how deeply Guru Nanak's message has permeated different cultures.
And continues to challenge our assumptions about faith and community.
Exactly.
It's just incredible how these videos bring the past to life.
I know.
And show how his impact is still felt today.
Powerful stuff.
Even in places far from his travels.
It makes you wonder, what journey are we on in our own life? How could we apply these teachings to our own world?
Those are some seriously big questions.
We'll have to keep unpacking them.
As we move on to part 2 of this deep dive.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Stick with us.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to our deep dive into the travels of Guru Nanak. Remember how we were talking about those vivid metaphors?
Like the simul tree.
The simul tree and the sinking food.
Oh, yeah.
Those weren't just random stories. They were tools for understanding something much deeper.
You're right. It's like he was taking these complex spiritual concepts and making them relatable. Even centuries later, those images stick with you.
Exactly. And it's not just about the imagery. It's about the actions behind them. Like with the Satya Sauda.
The true business.
Feeding the hungry, putting compassion into action that laid the groundwork for the Langar.
Which is still going strong today.
Absolutely. Okay, but here's something I'm thinking about.
Okay.
Guru Nanak was challenging powerful institutions.
Religious practices.
Wasn't that dangerous back then?
Absolutely. This was a time of rigid social hierarchies.
Limited freedom of thought.
Speaking out against those norms?
Especially as someone from a relatively humble background.
That was a huge risk.
It was.
So what gave him the courage to do that? Was it purely spiritual conviction?
Or was there something more to it?
Yeah.
I think it was a combination of things. The sources definitely point to his deep spiritual conviction. But also, his travels exposed him to so many different perspectives. He saw firsthand the suffering caused by those rigid social structures.
It's like he couldn't just stay silent.
He couldn't.
It's like he was bridging the gap between the spiritual and the practical.
Like, yeah, inner transformation is important.
Right.
But it needs to manifest in the real world, too.
Exactly. And that's where his message becomes even more powerful.
He wasn't just preaching from a mountaintop.
Right.
He was living it out, showing people a different way.
So we've talked about him challenging rituals, advocating for women.
Right.
But what about his encounters with people of different faiths? Did he ever try to convert anyone?
That's what's so fascinating. He was adamant about respecting everyone's path. In Mashhad, when asked about different sects of Islam, he emphasized the divine light in everyone. His focus wasn't on converting people,
but on revealing the shared essence, within all faiths.
Exactly.
So it wasn't about my religion is better than yours.
Right.
It was about finding that common thread of humanity.
That's a pretty radical concept, even today.
It is. And think about his time in Mecca.
The heart of Islam.
He didn't wear any specific religious garb. It was like he was saying,
Judge me by my actions.
by my message, not by the clothes I wear.
It all goes back to the idea of inner transformation being more important than outward appearances.
But how did people react to that, especially those in positions of power?
It was a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Some were receptive.
Eager to engage in dialogue?
Others, like the Nath Yogis at Rita Sahib, they were threatened by his message.
By his popularity.
Yeah.
Okay, but even with the Nath Yogis, there's that later encounter at Hinglage, right, where
Yeah.
they're more open to him. Does that suggest that even his critics were capable of evolving?
I think so. It highlights the importance of patience, of persistent dialogue. Change doesn't always happen overnight,
Right.
but with consistent effort and genuine compassion.
Even the most hardened hearts can soften.
Yeah.
That's a hopeful thought. But I'm also curious, what about the places themselves? Did the geography, the landscapes, play a role in shaping his teachings?
Absolutely. Remember, we're talking about journeys across vast and varied terrains.
From the Himalayas to the deserts of Arabia.
Those landscapes would have demanded resilience, adaptability, a deep connection to nature.
It's like those journeys were not just physical, but also tests of his spiritual strength.
And the lessons he learned along the way.
Those became woven into his teachings.
Exactly. The harshness of the desert might have inspired him to emphasize inner strength, the importance of relying on something greater than yourself when faced with adversity, the beauty of the mountains.
The interconnectedness of all things.
Those themes resonate throughout his teachings, too.
So it wasn't just about him traveling to these places, but about the places themselves becoming part of his message.
And that message, in turn, shapes the communities he encountered.
Think about those modern-day pilgrims we saw in the videos.
The Sindhi community in Colombo.
Preserving the Guru Granth Sahib.
Khalida Begum, the Muslim woman caring for a Gurdwara in Afghanistan.
These are living examples of his legacy centuries later and worlds away from where he physically walked.
It's like his journey never really ended. It continues through the lives of those he touched and those who continue to be inspired by his teachings. But I'm wondering,
What's that?
after all those years of traveling, what was it like for him to finally settle down in Kartarpur? What was the purpose of that community?
That's a great question.
It takes us to the next phase of his life. He wasn't just a wanderer. He was a builder, a leader.
Okay.
And Kartarpur wasn't just a village. It was a blueprint for a different way of living. But we'll dive deeper into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've journeyed with Guru Nanak across mountains and deserts and everything in between. He's challenged norms, sparked dialogue with all sorts of people. But now he's back in the Punjab region, founding a community in Kartarpur. So what was the vision behind that? Was it like a retirement plan or something much bigger?
I love that you asked that, because Kartarpur wasn't just about settling down. It was about putting all those years of travel and teaching into practice. Like he was saying, okay, I've seen what doesn't work. Now let's build something different.
So it was like a social experiment, a blueprint for a new way of living.
Exactly. And if we look closely, we can see echoes of his travels woven into the fabric of Kartarpur. Remember the Sachasada?
That true business of feeding the hungry.
Yes. That blossomed into the Langar, which became central to the community.
Ah, that makes sense. Free food for everyone, regardless of background. That's a pretty powerful statement about equality and breaking down social barriers.
And it's not just symbolic. Think about the practical impact. In a society where people were judged based on their caste, the Langar said, nope, everyone's welcome here. It was a radical act of inclusion, and it's still a core part of Sikhism today.
Yeah, I'm seeing a pattern here. This idea of taking abstract teachings and grounding them in real-world action.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about food. Guru Nanak also challenged gender roles, saying women were essential to society. In Kartarpur, they weren't relegated to the sidelines. Their contributions were valued.
But hold on. Was this truly gender equality or just a slightly better version of what already existed? The world back then was pretty patriarchal.
You raise a crucial point. While we can't judge the past by today's standards, it's important to acknowledge that Guru Nanak's teachings on gender were revolutionary for his time. He recognized the divine spark in everyone, regardless of gender, which was unheard of back then.
Okay, so Kartarpur was this microcosm of his vision for a more just world. How did that vision spread beyond those walls? Did he send out missionaries or write pamphlets?
He took a much more organic approach. Remember, he was a master storyteller, a poet. He used those skills to transmit his teachings, compiling them into hymns that would later become the foundation of the Guru Granth Sahib.
Ah, so he was planting seeds, literally, and figuratively. Those hymns would have been shared, memorized, passed down through generations.
Exactly. And the content itself is so rich. There are stories, metaphors, philosophical reflections. It's not just dogma. It's a guide to living a meaningful life. And the way he composed those hymns, weaving together different styles and influences that reflected his commitment to inclusivity, too.
Right. He included hymns from Hindu and Muslim mystics, showing that truth can be found in many different paths.
That's a powerful message for us today, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
In a world that often feels so divided, Guru Nanak's example reminds us to look for the common ground, the shared humanity that connects us all.
Okay, so he's built this community, shared his teachings, but then comes the question of succession. Did he appoint a family member, someone from a powerful lineage?
Nope. He chose Bailena, renaming him Guru Angad. And the significance of that name change, it meant part of me. It was like he was saying, my work continues through you.
Whoa, that's so different from the power struggles we often see even in spiritual communities. It's like he was prioritizing the continuation of the message, the values, over personal gain or family ties.
Exactly. And it set a precedent for future Sikh leaders. It wasn't about bloodlines, but about spiritual merit, about who could best serve the community and carry the torch forward.
So in a way, Kartarpur was both an ending and a beginning. Guru Nanak's physical travels came to an end, but his spiritual legacy, his message of unity, equality, selfless service, that journey continued outward, impacting countless lives.
It's like he planted this incredibly fertile seed, and it's still blossoming centuries later. It makes you think, what kind of seeds are WE planting with our own lives? What kind of world are we building for future generations?
Those are some profound questions to sit with. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, literally and figuratively. But I hope you listening feel inspired to continue exploring Guru Nanak's teachings. There's a whole universe of wisdom waiting to be discovered.
Remember, this isn't just about history. It's about what these teachings mean for us today. How can we apply them to our own challenges, our own search for meaning and purpose? That's the real journey, and it's one we all share.